and Zoning Commission to order. First thing is to have a roll call. If we may proceed with that, Leslie?
Yeah, just a minute. John Leslie's bringing some things out.
Thank you.
Ready for the roll call, Leslie.
Chairperson Fuller,
Here.
Commission Member Bowers,
Here.
Vanscoy, Walsh,
Here.
Peck, absent, Bowers,
Here.
Bauer, sorry.
It's a Bauer.
I get it wrong every time.
Okay, Leslie, is that everyone?
That is everyone.
Yeah, that's everyone, John.
Okay, very good. We have an agenda before us, and so I would seek approval of that agenda by voice vote. However, let me mention that the last several items under number 4, C, D, and E, are ones where we can discuss, but not vote on because we need to have public hearings for those.
John, if I could ask a quick question.
Yes.
Are we only supposed to review and comment on the Parkside Hills preliminary plat, or are we? Okay, we're not approving that at this point.
My understanding is that we can review it and provide comments, but we cannot hold a public hearing without the meeting open to the public.
I see.
So we certainly should review item B.
And John,
Likewise, item C. Yes,
John, this is Leslie. This is considered a public meeting. The meeting has been posted and it is open to the public if they wanted to join in via conference call. But
Okay.
for this meeting though, it is just for discussion.
Okay, very good. So I would appreciate an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Same. Okay, so we have an agenda. Now, the first item is to look at our minutes from the last meeting in January, when we could actually meet. And I'd appreciate approval of those minutes or any changes to the minutes that we had from there. So I have a motion for approval.
This is Emily. I motion to approve.
Okay, second?
Second.
Second by Bauer.
Second by Bauer. Very good. Let's vote to approve the minutes. All those in favor, aye.
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 Those opposed, same. The minutes are approved from January 28th. So the first item on the agenda is to have an introduction and welcome from Matt, if you'd like to, and then proceed with the preliminary plat for the Parkside Hills development.
Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, welcome, Matt.
Welcome, Matt.
There you go.
Thank
Let's get
you.
the meeting underway. Enough formality.
I'm sorry, I can't put... So much easier just to be able to point and say, you, Matt.
What's next, John?
Well, if there's nothing I was on mute. I'm sorry. We'll all get used to this in one way or another. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. I'm sorry it's the circumstances it is right now, but hopefully we get through it sooner rather than later. That's everyone's wish, I'm sure. So let's proceed then with the preliminary plat. We have a number of. Has everyone had a chance to pull it up and review it?
And I did send out I got a late submission from MMS this afternoon around 3:05, so I did send it out about 3:30. And so if you check your email, you'll see comments that MMS responded back to city staff's review of the preliminary plat. So it's a document, it should be in your email. The first page is the comments, and then following is the concept plan and other documents. And Ron, are you on the call?
Yes, I am on the phone.
Okay, all right. So Ron, do you want to start off explaining the preliminary plat? And then we can go through the comments?
Okay, well, this is a preliminary plat for the 23-acre parcel on the east side of Parkside Drive. We have previously shown a concept and PUD. This is a piece of ground that was rezoned to a PUD. And this preliminary plat is following pretty much in conformance. There's a few differences from what the initial concept was on that initial PUD. Specifically on lot 13, we're working with someone that is interested with having senior independent living there, and they wanted a little bit more property than what was shown in the PUD, so we eliminated a few of multi-family units along there and incorporated it into what is now lot 13 on the preliminary plat. And besides that, it's pretty close to conforming with the PUD. And I don't know if you want to go through the city comments at this meeting, or yes, I think that's the one to have, Leslie. Let me ask, how many people would be living in the independent living unit with a revision? What size? Just a second. I believe it was around 30 units. Let me double check that. 30. Let me double check that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm having a tough time dialing it. I can hear you. I can barely hear you.
Who's having a hard time hearing Ron?
Yeah, no problems in my case. Okay. Sorry, it cuts in and out on this side. I was on a conference call using the same service earlier today, and I had a real tough time. It took me 10 minutes here to dial in, so. Oh, gosh.
Checking, just trying to dial in too, and can't get it.
Yeah, we've just had a couple reports of a few other people trying to dial in that are having some trouble.
I was using Zoom earlier today, and that was working pretty well. Maybe that's a possibility for the future. Or Skype. Yeah, you guys are breaking up so bad. I'm going to hang up and try and call back and see if I can get back in better. Okay. Okay. We'll wait a minute or two then. Was that in text, you need? Yes. That was your update. I did verify it is 30 units, which is what we had proposed before. They just wanted to have more of one-story spread-out building versus a two-story building. Okay. For the increased space, the number of units in the senior living hasn't changed from the previous concept. Got it.
And when you talk about lot 13, can you explain to me because I can only tell lots 1 through 8 in terms of being numbered. What's lot 13?
Tell her it's a 12-plex lot.
Unless I'm not.
It would be in the
Lot 13 is
area.
independent.
The independent living area at Second Street and Elm Street, where that intersection is, it would be the southeast quadrant.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think Dave's
Yeah.
turned out.
There?
Hey Chad, can you hear us better now?
Yeah, now I got you. This is a lot better now.
Oh, good.
Great.
Good deal. Oh, great.
Is Dave on the line now too? Dave Scheckinger?
Yes, I'm on the line as well.
Okay, great. All right. We must all be here. Okay. We can go back
I think the
to,
thing to get is to proceed to the various questions that were raised in the March 24th response. That we got an email today from Leslie. And so these are comments from Dave, so he's on the line now. The first was about a turn lane and the need to get approval for the proposed turn lane. I see the answer is that the developer's working with the NPS to get approval. That will be forthcoming soon, or any timetable for that? I talked to Pete Swisher today, specifically asked him that question, how long before we may find out a yes or no. He couldn't really give me an answer. He said it was going to have to go to the regional office and not just approved through him. But all I would say is that it's probably going to take some time. Okay.
I have a question.
How does that fit with your development schedule? I don't know. Given approval of everything, when you would be interested in beginning?
This is Roger, the mayor.
That
My question,
comes in down below with the DOT. Our development schedule is we need to go as soon as we can because the DOT is ready to work with us on the dirt, and we have to get it done as quick as we can and get them an answer. So I need to sit down at some point, and I'm trying to find a way to have a meeting with city staff and the mayor to discuss this turn lane anyway. At this point, I mean, we're trying as hard as we can, but it's the National Park Service, so I don't know. Plus, of course, what's going on. But the DOT has been all over me about that other stuff, and I think, where's that here?
I think it's comment number 3.
Yeah.
Has the IDOT agreed on the grading plan, right-of-way limits? And I received an email this afternoon from the DOT that forwarded on to Leslie, and basically it said that they feel that they will be able to work something out with the developer to allow the grading that's proposed on the DOT property, but would like to get it done as soon as possible because it affects their bidding and letting of the construction of the widening. They either need to make sure that they have the ground easements or acquisitions tied up prior to letting it, or have some reassurance that this grading is going to happen. If this grading happens, then they don't have to have the acquisition of the property because we would be placing the fill where they would need to. So I think they're very willing to work with us. It helps them out, it helps us out, but the timing as far as when they want to let this project, they need to know soon which direction they have to proceed.
And the other direction that they have to proceed is they have to come to me and come with a final or a formal offer to purchase the rights or they won't. I don't typically in this case sell the ground. I would sell an easement. I just did this last year with the DOT up along a property that I own by I-380 in Cedar Rapids. It was actually the exact same process and kind typically purchase an easement from me, and that's what they're trying to move through. But as they purchase that easement, they're going to take more ground than they need, which then basically is going to change a little bit of what we're doing, and we don't want that to happen when we can put it together here and just get it done, and it works. It's going to work better if we can work with them. For them by far, because the grading that needs to be done, it's going to be a mess trying to do it and then them do it, or them do it and then us do it. It's going to be a mess. Whereas if we just work together and get this done, it's better for both of us. So.
Well, in reading the traffic impact study, it certainly seems to me that the turn lane is needed, but not necessarily immediately.
Yeah, and you got to kind of take some of that turn lane in context also, because in the counts, if you look at the counts, they're real high in the morning while people are exiting West Branch headed towards the intersection. And so there really isn't a lot of people turning, so that's where I'm like, okay, wait. There aren't a lot of people turning in here, and in the future, people coming out of town in the morning and at the highest traffic point of the day, they're probably not going to be turning into the subdivision, maybe a few into the gas station, so I don't know that it's going to grow that much because they're coming out of town and headed toward work. So that was kind of, I was like, yes, there's traffic for an hour, but that's it for the whole day, and it's only outflow traffic in the morning. And so at this point, yeah, Ron and I have talked about this a bunch. At this point, until this thing gets to a certain percentage, there isn't going to be really any traffic, and I don't know that I'm going to be building out that quickly to get to that point in the next year. It might be 3 years. So
the question is whether this could be delayed for a year, 2 years, whatever it might be.
yeah.
Right. I mean, the biggest question really is, can we proceed with the preliminary plat at this point without being able to get an answer from the Park Service yet? Because they're just going to take some time to get an answer from the Park Service. Right. The developer has said that he would like to proceed, and that he was saying the turn lane the need isn't going to be there immediately. Let me ask that question of Dave. If we were to delay for 1 year, perhaps 2 years, would that have any impact on the ability to put in a turn lane in the future?
John, I think there's probably another issue with this. And Ron, do you have the email that Sheila Lee sent on this turn lane and traffic study? That was sent yesterday at 2:40.
I probably do. Which one are you talking about?
Sheila had sent some comments to you on the traffic study. She said, I have the following traffic study review comments from the DOT. The IDOT minimum length of a left turn lane is 150 feet, not including the taper. The second comment is the site plan does not show adding the left turn lane that is warranted on X30, nor how adding the turn lane would work with the at-grade ramp terminals for the interchange to the south. The next comment is the turn lane warrants analysis should have used day of opening full build out and forecasted volumes 20 years from day of opening. The next comment is would like to see the working figures on the application of the different growth, development, as well as background that would help a separate question on the assumption of 5 years or 5% per year traffic growth for only 5 years. And the last comment was given the distance to the adjacent interchange, and may want to look at how the additional traffic will impact the at-grade terminals. So it seems that DOT has some questions on this. I don't know, with them having access control, what they're going to allow and not allow if this turn lane isn't put in. So we probably need to have some conversation with DOT on this before we go making any exceptions or conditions.
Does the DOT actually go all the way down? I don't think they do, because I asked Ron today about where their jurisdiction ends, and it ends previous to that turn lane. So at the end of the day, they don't have jurisdiction over the turn lane.
Their jurisdiction goes up from the off-ramp north to what would be the right-of-way line of Elm Street and then stops. The turn lane that is being proposed would go pretty much from that intersection with Elm Street north further. Now, there would be some widening that would have to happen and a taper back down in the portion that would be the DOT access control zone. And I have we just sent them the traffic study. We never intended to show them any sort of a layout or plan for how the paper would work. I can draw a concept up of that real quick and send it to them. The other comments that they have here, I forwarded that on to IIW, who did the traffic study, and it's something that they can look at. I think it's not going to change the results of the traffic study, as far as it's not going to change the showing that the turn lane is warranted or anything else. So I think that is something that would be fairly easy to work through with the DOT. Well, that sounds promising that it would be easy to work through, but on the other hand, if they do raise issues, then they need to be worked through. I personally don't know how difficult this will be or how much time it will take, but it does need to be settled.
And like I said, I think I don't know why they're proposing comments on area that they have no jurisdiction over. That was kind of my question, is why do they have input on something that it's up to the city on this, not up to the DOT.
DOT has access rights a certain distance from the intersection of the off-ramp terminal to the north.
Yep, and we had that discussion with them, remember, Dave? And they were like, well, we can't change it.
They can't change the distance, but they do have access privileges there, so if you're going to do anything within that area for an access and it impacts their level of service or their operations, they have control over whether they allow that or not. That's the issue at hand.
Okay. So the control to the entrance, not the turn lane.
The turn lane has to transition from the turn lane on the north side of this roadway or access that we're putting in to the south, where we're going to insert a lane in the center, and that has to transition back to their section. That work is all taking place on their access control section.
Okay, yep, no, I got you. Okay.
We had this same issue with Casey's, and you can see how far that is. That access privilege extended 600 feet south of that intersection, and we were right at the tail end of it, but we had to go through quite a few studies and a lot of planning in order to get that one put in. This one seems like it should be a little bit more straightforward because we've got a pretty finite area that we're dealing with, and it's pretty well laid out, so hopefully you're able to move through it quicker.
Yeah, and they've got some motivation too, because like I said, I'm not with what they want for access easements. It's going to hold up the letting of their bid anyway this fall. So, I mean, they need to. We can get on it as soon as possible, and it should be pretty quick because again, they want us to work together and get this thing done as quickly as possible. So.
Right. The only other comment I would have on holding off is that we're going to have increased traffic that we're going to have to run through traffic controls trying to insert this turn lane in the middle if we hold off until we get to partial development.
Well, it sounds to me like the DOT's issues could be fairly quickly settled. The more difficult part, though, is the regional office of the Park Service.
Yeah, and I think they've been reassigned a few other things right now. So
when I talked to Pete, he said quite a bit of the National Park Service staff has been reassigned to the coronavirus assistance.
Can I add a little to maybe the park situation? I did have a conversation. This is Redmond, City Administrator. I did have a conversation with Pete. He's got a couple of variables that he doesn't quite know how that's going to play out just yet. So there seems to be a historic review group or commission of some sort, federal group, and there's also a tribal component group. And if, when he sends this out, they have any, he said, interest of having more than just comments digitally or whatever, then they actually have to organize meetings and bring people in and do a lot of other steps that could take some time. So from his understanding, I think you forwarded a plan that least affects the park as possible, because that's the plan that he's going to go with. And if there's any adjustments to that plan, you may have to go all the way back to step A and go back through all those multiple steps. So he kind of indicated that it's important to get the very best proposal that has the least impact to the park, so that he can then take that and go through the steps. And hopefully he's built up some trust with some of those commissions and bodies that they may just go ahead and say, okay, we're good with it, and not go through a big full public meeting, public process that could take time. So that's what he shared with me today. So there's a lot of touch and go on how long or short this could be. So just so that you know.
Well, here's what it comes down to, Redmond. If we don't figure out a way to do this without the turn lane, and it just delays too much, and we can't move forward with anything, it's going to stall the entire development of that corner, including what the DOT does. With the interstate, with the widening, the subdivision that I'm doing, the gas station that I'm doing, everything will be delayed. So that's why we need to try and find a solution to see if we can't look at this. Best case scenario would be, of course, to do it right now. Let's get it done. But if that process takes 12 months or 6 months, and we get even 6 months and we get out of cycle for construction, then we're delayed 12 months. Because if we get into too late of the year, we're not going to do it in the late year. We'll have to start in the spring again. So I know the DOT is not going to be very happy with me and with anybody else if we can't keep moving forward. So maybe that's something we need to reach out to Sheila then and talk to them and say, listen, we've got Park Service in here. We need to address this in a different way and look at to see if there's if we can do this in a year or two so that we can move forward with the process. Because it's still going to take me, just to get the DOT stuff done will probably only take 30 to 45 days. To move the dirt they need moved. But the rest of my subdivision is going to take, months. By the time I get dirt moved, streets in, all the grading done, all of that stuff done. I mean, we were looking at trying to start late year this year with the first building. So we're really not even going to get into a whole lot of construction of that area strong probably until 2021, the spring of 2021. So that's kind of, if we could figure out a way to move forward with it, work through this with them, and to come up with a solution maybe in the future here in next year, that would probably be the best. Otherwise, everything's going to stall out if we hold up on this one subject.
This is Emily Walsh. I think what you got, Chad, is you got the federal government and all the red tape that goes along with that. And so, yeah, I think really what you just need to do is explain to the DOT what the situation is and how does that impact. Because it sounds like they have to answer those questions outright before we can.
Yeah. And we can get those. Those questions.
I think they would be sympathetic or empathetic, at least, to know. I mean, federal government, National Park Service, that's a tall order, but you're working on it. But realistically, like you said, it's helpful to them if you can get started. So maybe trying to get kind of their feedback on what that would look like to them, knowing that you're in process of that. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad Redmond had a discussion with Pete, because it did seem to suggest that the least impact kind of turn lane would be the one that could be got him through the red tape most quickly, or most certainly. Is there a possibility of redesigning the left turn lane to take less park
I guess first of all, it's just a conceptual layout yet. We're not going to get into the design of the turn lane until after the preliminary plat gets approved and we know that we can proceed with the development. Right now, I have it shown with two different concepts for the turn lane. One, all of the turn lane widening being on the west side of Parkside Drive, and the other one with the turn lane widening being equal on both sides. And in both cases, I've shown the minimum amount of additional pavement, minimum amount of impact that will be required to meet a turn lane that the DOT specifications would be satisfied with.
Well, using land on both sides would seem to suggest less parkland, so that would perhaps...
Well, it's parkland on both sides.
Oh,
It's parkland on both sides. So, it just depends on where the parts of ground that they think are most sensitive and don't want to have disturbed are. And then,
I have an answer to that
and they haven't told me
question.
that, but when they tell me that, I can look at and design a turn lane around to avoid that as much as possible.
This is Roger, the mayor, and I talked with Pete also. The west side is the more sacred ground to the park. The east side is far less sacred to the park. On the west side, there's old foundations, and which may require archaeological ramifications. But the east side is far less obstructive for the Park Service. That's what Pete,
We're talking about 12 foot or 6 foot on both sides. So, either way,
From an area that has already been disturbed and impacted when the road got put in, we're widening, like Chad said, 6 foot on both sides. So it's taking the edge of the shoulder and pushing it out 6 feet. That's not a huge area of impact.
one would hope not, but using both sides does sound better.
yeah, our options were basically, like Ron said, is to give it to them and kind of let them tell us. It's usually typically easier that way. Give them a couple options and say, here's what we have for options. What do you guys feel most comfortable with? And that's why the two options are kind of thrown together to see where we could go. So,
So this is John once more. It seems that the discussion needs to proceed with the DOT to settle the issues there. And have you provided Pete with the two options for the turn lane?
Yes.
He also has...
Yeah, so he has those two options. Emailed those to him on Friday. Checked today. He hadn't seen them yet because it went into his junk email folder. But when I had him on the phone today, he saw them, opened them up, and was going to forward them on and look at them and try to get me an answer, which is get a preference as soon as he can.
Well, I guess there's nothing more to do on that matter right now except just cross our fingers. I'm sure it's in everyone's interest to be able to proceed under the current season.
so do we just want to, we'll keep working on that point, but can we just address the rest of it then and just kind of keep moving forward, and then Ron will stay on top, or I'll stay on top of just seeing what we can come up with faster. And as long as we can work through, get these other points, we might as well get all these worked out and figured out, and that way we'll continue to work with DOT on their right of way and get that, and then do the best we can with the National Park Service, and then we'll just address these other things and keep moving. So.
Okay, let's proceed with the second item, which is Elm Street and its width, whether it should be a 31-foot wide street or, as requested, a 29-foot wide one. Comments from Anyone?
Yeah, John, this is Dave.
Sure.
We did take a look at this with the fire department, with the police department, with city staff, and the feeling was that this is one of the few options we have for an east-west street in this area that could be extended in the future. I do realize that there's a creek and a floodway there, but that's no different than any of the other creek crossings we have in town. And aside from Main Street, this is really the only street on the southern part that's still north of the interstate that will allow us to extend with a substantial street. And having the access where it is, the streets that it's connecting already, it seems that it would be appropriate to have that at 31 feet.
I see. And there's quite a bit of additional land that might perhaps be developed beyond that.
That's the way that we viewed that, yes.
Yeah. So I guess I'd say that the Wapsikinnicock Creek is just immediately to the east. There's a large section of floodplain, big section of floodway. I guess I feel that it would be kind of unlikely for a developer to pay to cross that floodway. You cannot place fill in the floodway, so you'd be looking at doing a bridge that would span the width of that floodway. It would be pretty cost prohibitive to have a developer spend the money to cross that creek. It's not like, since there's a floodway there now, it's not like you can just put in a standard box culvert. You have to not have any fill placed in the floodway, so I don't have it in front of me, but the floodway width there is probably somewhere between 50 and 100 feet. That you'd have to have a bridge that long in order to cross it.
There are provisions for allowing that, Ron. As you're aware, we would have to remap that and show that there's no increase in the flood elevation in doing that. Remap the floodway, so forth. That there's a standard process for doing those things. We do that quite often with the street extensions. So still feel that that should be 31 to allow in the future if someone were to pick up that area to the east. We have connection. We need to maintain the street networks.
This is Roger. I concur with Dave. I just don't want to landlock ourselves into a narrow street when there's that much potential, possible potential farther east. So I feel that 31 feet is justifiable.
Ron, does that affect the lots along the side there that much?
No, it does not affect the lots. The right-of-way width stays the same, so the lots stay the same.
Okay. All right. Let's go to 3 then, which we've talked about.
We've talked about 3, so really 4. Next is number 4. And that's about the open area and whether it's for public use or not.
Oh, no,
The answer-
it's a private lot.
Okay.
We drafted that assisted living center just to kind of find a size of lot that with the occupancy levels that we kind of looked at, to make sure we had enough green space there for the occupancy level that would come in. I don't know that that assisted living will be built that exact way. It may come in as more of a square instead of a T, and so that's why we kind of expanded that lot and left it open as a buildable area for that, just having enough square footage of land to hit an occupancy level. So.
Okay.
John, on that discussion item, in drafting the PUD ordinance, was there an intent to have a common open area as part of the PUD? And was that common open area just for the dwellings located within the PUD, or was that intended for open area for the general public?
Well, this is also related to the set aside for park use and public space. I don't know that we've seen anything that is that kind of a set aside here. So, in part, having walking trails within the development would be providing some of that public space.
Okay.
The number 4 also has a question of whether parking should be provided off Sycamore Drive. And if indeed we are going to have an area here that is publicly accessible, and that would be desirable, or that there were public spaces for Lot 13.
Sorry, I'm trying to pull this up. My computer's slow. Brian, we don't have any public spaces on Lot 13, do we?
Any public? No, it's a parking lot, and I guess for Lot 13, I do kind of want to stress this is a concept plan. So what we have shown could be different, but what we have shown would be and it's a little bit more than minimum required, but it's the parking specifically for the use of Lot 13 in the parking lot next to the building. And that open space that we're talking about is specifically Lot 13. It is not a community outlot open space. It is part of the property of Lot 13. It is opening it up for the independent living people to go out and enjoy. Right. Does your concept plan show any public space? Stormwater detention doesn't mean it's right here. Stormwater detention outlot, and that there's a small outlot A at the northwest corner of 2nd Street and Elm Street. What is the reaction of the other commission members to the desirability of public space in this PUD?
I think it's highly desirable that we need to have some sort of public space. I mean, walking trails are one thing, but those are through the development. So are those maintained by the HOA? Like, are those in the townhomes? You know?
Yeah, so between the townhomes, yeah, you kind of see the parking and walking between the townhomes. We put that green space in the front of those. That's kind of that, this is kind of that different concept we were doing. Yeah, so for the townhomes, you have the open space to the face of those on that, up through the middle of them, and that'll all be in a condo association. But, yeah.
But those are privately owned by the association or the whatever, right?
Yeah, they'd be with the association, yes.
Okay.
So, John, I would comment that we aren't too far away from several parks, including Herbert Hoover Park, which is a pretty large open space. I realize that's a national park, but then we also have Veronic Park just up 2nd Street. That's not too far away. And if we can get this trail pushed through on the Gaskill property, this would be not too far from access to that trail. And depending upon how that area to the east develops, there's an opportunity there to connect that. So I just wanted to bring it up from a discussion standpoint, but also point out that there are some park spaces nearby.
Yeah, we'd love it if you could get a hold of that Gaskill property, because I'd love to be able to connect to that park to the north. That'd be great.
Other comments? Roger, in other cases where there has not been a set aside of land for public purposes, there has been an in lieu payment. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Lynch has paid us $5,000 for a little.
Right, that was a very small area, though.
Yeah, tiny little area. They are providing, this particular plan does have public space in it, though. Like, you know, it's there, it's just
Can't hear you, Raj.
it's just not designed as public space,
Hey, Raj, come up forward, will you?
I guess. I mean, this particular plan has park space or public space in it, it's just not specified as a park. And you know, that's part of the PUD in my mind. I guess I'm satisfied with their answer on number 4. But I don't know, we got a lot of park space in town. This provides enough park space in my mind, or public space.
There isn't any public space though, Raj. There's 11.1 acres of green space, but there's no actual public space.
Yeah, well, I'm counting the green space as public space, I guess. That's what I'm counting.
But they're saying that belongs to Lot 13 and that's private for the independent living facility.
Well, if some kids want to go play football in that independent living lot, they probably could.
Not very likely.
In West Branch?
So it might be good entertainment for the people there.
Yeah.
John, this is Ryan. If I may, I think I mentioned what Dave brought up in a previous meeting when we have developments that are in close proximity to other parks, it may be redundant to require the fulfillment of the park space set aside. You know, if the
I understand that with regard to a 10% land set aside.
yeah.
On the other hand, providing some support for the park is something that we've been looking forward to with all developments.
Yeah.
Is there a way to access the parks? Like, can you get outside of the development? I guess I'm looking at the roads, walk up to the other parks, or are you kind of stuck? Does that go through, I guess, to Second Street?
Connects up to the
Okay.
that part of town to the north.
Okay. So at least there's an option to get out. It's not like you have to go to the park side to get to any sort of recreational.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's proceed to number 5 about emergency vehicles. And it suggested that the turning exhibit shows that this is suitable. Any comments on that?
Evan, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I just had some concern about getting like our bigger trucks around those radiuses. I don't know what those radiuses are. I can't. I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
Did you get the turning radius exhibit that they had sent this afternoon?
Yeah, we all got that. We all have that.
Okay.
And I'm in agreement with all of them except the one on the private drive. If a pickup is parked in the driveway and he's sticking out, and if there's cars parked anywhere in those parking stalls and in the driveways, I think a big fire truck's gonna have a little difficulty. I wish the inside of that curve could have a shorter radius. That's my only comment. The outside should have the same radius, but the inside, if a truck could cut his tires short, that would help a lot in my mind.
Ron, you had indicated this is a concept. We need to adjust this parking lot a little bit to improve the access.
Yeah, first one thing that I would like to say is this particular comment is based upon the conceptual layout that we have included as the property exhibit, not the preliminary plat itself. Approving the preliminary plat will not approve anything for a site plan in the radius that would be needed on this lot 13 for independent living. The city would get another chance to take a look at that when a site plan is submitted and review that and make comment, and we could adjust the radiuses at that time, because those radiuses will not get built with the subdivision improvements. They would get built after the site plan is approved and a parking lot is laid out here for the independent living. So
That answer satisfies
I really
me.
feel like this particular comment should be addressed in the future with the site plan. Sounds fine to me, although having raised the question, you certainly can make sure that the final plat is appropriate for turning at radii. Correct? Okay, sounds good. Yep. Any other comments on 5? If not, number 6 is about a buffer between the commercial and the residential areas.
Yeah, John, as you know, we have buffer requirements in place in our code, and we have the city's maintenance facility, and we have, I think it's Peyton's Welding Shop and a few others down there that are in that industrial zone. The comment was to, as we put residential units in here, have some sort of a buffer between those two zoning districts.
And the response was that this should be up to the homeowners.
Yeah, and why I say this is because sometimes people will put a buffer in as a fence. Sometimes people will put a buffer in as a tree. What we've seen on smaller lots, which those are 0 lot lots that back up to it, if we put and I guess I should ask that question first, is what's the city's thought on that buffer? Are you thinking a tree buffer there?
Yeah.
We've certainly had developments where we have had a tree buffer. Well, I'm not sure if that's the very best in terms of the storage units, for example, or some of the other areas here.
Chad, I would think that this would be a good opportunity for a landscape berm to provide a buffer in that area that would soften that a little bit, but I'm not saying that has to be that way, but just a suggestion.
Sorry, I'm trying to look up the depth of my lot. Sometimes what we run into is the use of your backyard, because that buffer has to be on the property of the home. And if you look at the lots for 1, 2, 3, 4, you're looking at, say, like lot 3, we've got a 33-foot depth there. If I have to put because those houses are going to sit above the street there, those will be kind of a walkout style, looking out over. In order to get a buffer in, that is a berm. That berm's going to have to be, I wouldn't even know, 6, 7 foot tall. And in order to make that work, I'm literally going to use the entire backyard as a berm.
Yeah. A berm is not going to be tall enough to be able to screen someone that's on the second story of their house, with that yard being at the basement level walkout, from viewing out onto that commercial area. Trees could provide some sort of a buffer there, but a berm is not.
No, that's why I was saying a landscape berm. So if it's only a couple of feet tall, and then you put some trees on there just to kind of get some sort of a landscape feature that has the trees to provide the vertical height that you need, that would probably be acceptable in that area. I don't want to try to do a 10-foot tall berm by any means.
Yeah, no, Dave, I'm just worried about backyard usage. Again, because we don't have much backyard. I mean, the trees would probably work out. I would just have to, because the other point I was going to make was, if people want to fence these in because there's 0 lots, they can fence these in. We have to be careful where we place those trees. When you only have 33 feet in the backyard, to get a pine in there, or to get, we use a lot of Norway spruces. They're going to be probably 8 foot wide at the base. So if we slide, we've got to keep them in enough so people can put fences behind them. Again, I'm worried about how the usage of the backyard is going to be. That's kind of my thing, especially for homes that are like this, that are kind of starter homes. It kind of negates a lot of the backyard if we're filling them in with berm and trees. So just makes it a little bit harder to sell is all. But it's kind of back and forth. We have some people that don't care, and then some people that come in and say, okay, I just want trees in my backyard blocked out.
Well, I would say some of them would think if they have to look at Peden's shop, that probably isn't going to be much more helpful than than a smaller backyard. You know what I mean? In terms of aesthetics, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we went back. Trees would always, like I said, we're big Norway spruce people. I've done rows and rows of these things to block streets off and block stuff off. So if we could, the other thing is the water is falling that way. So if we've got water falling down that hill and we berm that, we're going to capture the water in the backyards and hold it in the backyards, and we're going to have issues when we burn with all that water. By the time you get to lot 6, 7, and 8, they're going to have a lot of water because all the water is going to be caught by the berm from 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5, and it's going to push down through all those backyards instead of shedding off the way it probably should. So I can do trees if that's what we look for. I would hesitate on the berm just because of those couple of things that I said, but I could do the spruce trees and bank those along there and put those up. That wouldn't be a huge deal.
Okay, well, I think trees are something that we're definitely interested in, and the more the better, by and large. Number 7 is the sidewalk and adequate parking between the sidewalk and the buildings. The answer is no, don't want to move the sidewalk. So,
Sorry, Ron, did we have this discussion after we sent this email?
Yes, we had this discussion after I sent the email.
Okay. So, Ron and I talked about this a little bit, and our discussion I actually, as we looked through it, I looked at where infrastructure is going to go as far as gas, electric, and
right.
That. And so, I actually, to get the driveway so there's a little more room, Ron and I talked about, how far are we talking about moving the sidewalk 2.5 feet closer to the street, correct?
Yes, 2.5 foot closer to the street. Right now, it's shown that you'd have a 29-foot street, and then you'd have 9.5 foot from the back of the curb to the front face of the sidewalk. And Chad and I talked about moving that sidewalk in 2.5 foot on each side, which would give you 7 foot of grass between the back curb and the sidewalk.
And we've done this in other neighborhoods. And what it does is it gives you a little bit more room to park in the driveway so you don't have your vehicle sticking out. But it also, if you look where we've got to plant trees, where we want to place those trees between driveways, we also have to get the electrical boxes and then the low voltage boxes. So it gives us another 2.5 feet in the front yard in order to get all of our infrastructure in and then still get trees in those areas. So I would not be opposed. We talked about it after the campus. I would not be opposed if the city was okay with it, moving that to a 7 foot instead of a 9.5 foot.
Yeah, I think that's what we were looking at as well, so that fits right with the comment.
I'm the one that brought that up. This is Roger. We have a couple townhouses in town where a guy will park his pickup in the driveway, and his trailer hitch sticks out in the sidewalk, and we're getting a couple complaints, or the bigger trucks just don't fit sometimes. But what you're saying sounds great, so I concur with that.
Yeah, and well, after we looked at it, I looked at it at first, and then I've been working with Alliance to kind of lay out the infrastructure, where we're going to put the boxes and everything, and it's going to be next to the driveways, in between the buildings in the back, because I don't want them in the green space between the buildings, and of course they need access off the street, so I was trying to fit the sidewalk, all the infrastructure, and my trees in. I said, well, yeah, if we can move closer, that'd be great, so we can do that.
What width sidewalk?
What are we, 5
It's 5 foot wide.
5.
Yep.
It's 5 foot wide.
Okay, any more comments on number 7? Moving on to number 8. I understand that we would have wet bottom basins, or at least one of them would be, outlet B.
Yes, the outlet B, stormwater basin would be a pond, a wet bottom basin, outlet. I guess it's actually not an outlet, it's part of lot 10. That would be a dry bottom basin in the southeast corner. And on outlet B, the slopes on that lot would be 3.5 to 1.
Okay. Well, I think wet bottom would be a feature there and desirable. Is it going to have fencing?
No.
Is that a concern to anyone?
Well, when I'm looking at that pond and on the contours shown, it looks like it could be up to 17 feet deep, to the deepest spot. Are you looking at doing any sort of benching just below the normal water levels, so that if somebody were to be on that steep slope, there was a little bit of a flat spot they could recover before they continue to go down? That's kind of guidelines for doing some of these larger ponds, but in an area where we have a lot of residential and easy access for kids, we just don't want to have something that steep slope that would potentially cause issues.
I didn't have that shown here, but it's something that could be incorporated into the final design.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then again, with the fence comment, given that we have a pretty dense residential area here, this is probably a young family type of neighborhood, I would assume, given the type of development. Do we want to look at doing some sort of a barrier around here so we don't have that attractive nuisance?
We've done these a million places, and this is the first time I've ever had this question. And we've done them in dense neighborhoods with lots of families around them, and we've never had an issue with fencing or kids or anything like that. So this is literally the first time I've heard that. So, and we've done much larger ponds than this.
Are those usually pretty gradual sloping though, Chad? I know the ones that I've generally seen are pretty low slope going to the water. It's not quite as steep as what we see here.
Ron, did we do about the same slope in that last big one we did in Prairie Village?
There's sections of it that have the floodable and slope down to the water surface. So there's quite a few ponds that we've done that have probably a quarter to half of the slope around it being steep. Now, if you get the flatter ground, oftentimes you will have a little flatter slope leading up to the pond, but if you're sloping a pond on a hilly ravine, which is frequently where they would end up, you will sometimes have that steep slope down to the water surface. I think the important thing that, as Dave was saying, would be to have that bench just below the water surface, so you'd have that shallow water right along the shoreline.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. Hey, Dave, what do you think about if we riprap that thing with some bigger riprap instead? Because we typically like to leave those. I don't like to invite people in to those, and typically either riprap them or what I'll do is leave a 10-foot barrier around them, and I'll plant prairie grass and prairie flowers and leave that grow up to be 3 or 4 foot tall in the summer, and then mow the rest of it. What are your thoughts on that to just kind of create a barrier to keep people out?
Is this outlet going to be dedicated to the city afterwards?
Not that I know of. It was going to be an association. The last I knew, we were going to incorporate all that into association.
That's the way it's shown on the preliminary plat. It would be part of the association, would not be
Okay.
to the city.
So if that maintenance can be done by the association, we can have some landscaping feature around there. I think that would help to prevent people from being attracted right up to the edge.
Okay. Yeah, I think the one we're doing in Prairie Village, that's kind of what we're finishing that up, and that's our thing there is mow up to the 10 foot before the pond, and then leave the long prairie grasses grow, and just decorate it or just make it look nice. Or we've done riprap around them too, up about anywhere from 5 to 8 foot, and then that riprap is usually a pretty. What's that size of riprap we usually use around the big stuff?
Around the edge of the pond, oftentimes it'd be like a 6-inch size.
Yeah. So you got a pretty good boulder for if a kid slips and he's going to catch himself anyway before he gets to the riprap, sliding down a hill or something. He'll catch on that riprap before he slides into the water. But we try and discourage, because we don't fill those with fish anyway. There's so much salt that comes off of the roads that goes into them. We can't keep the pH balance in it correct to put fish in them. So it just kills all the fish anyway. So we just kind of keep those. You got to have a really big pond to keep fish in. And so we typically don't invite people in. We try and, kind of leave a little barrier there so they don't get into it. So,
Matt, do you have any concerns with that?
That's you.
No, not
No, he
I'm
says
fine
no.
with it.
It's not audio, video.
He's fine with all that idea.
Yeah.
I am too.
Okay.
I don't think a fence is necessary. I think the grass and the riprap would.
I suppose this is too small to be aerated.
Yeah, we run into, again, if you don't have enough water, if you get a real, you can run out of water fast. It'll, depending on how it's aerated and how it's done, if you're circulating that water too much, it'll run out. It's not a very big basin for that. I mean, trying to think, the one we did in Prairie Village is probably 3 times the size of this one. And we are, yeah, and then we were looking at aerating that, and it even gets tough, so.
Okay, well, let's move in unless there are more questions on to number 9. And the answer to this about the utilities and so forth on adjacent property is that an easement agreement is being worked out.
Yep.
Okay. And number, any issues or questions about that easement agreement? No. Okay, let's move to number 10 then. I wasn't exactly sure what this question was.
I think there's a little typo in how we typed up the actual comments in the city. The comment should have been that not to extend Elm Street all the way to the east property line, to stop it at just past the private drive, which we've agreed to and revised the preliminary plat to show Elm Street stopping just short of where you need to have access to the street's private drive.
Okay. Dave, does that sound fine?
Yes, and the reason for this, John, is most of the time what we see happen is that this creates erosion issues on the adjacent property. It kind of creates an issue with when we put that street right up to the property line, it doesn't necessarily set it up for future grade all that well. That section of pavement doesn't have much traffic. It kind of deteriorates. Right. It's just a unusable portion that collects a bunch of trash and other stuff. Not to criticize Matt's staff or anything like that. It just tends to happen.
It's more work. Okay, well, moving on then to number 11, our last, and that is a question about emergency vehicles and the radii. And the answer is that this will be taken into further account in the final plat. Is that a suitable answer?
Yeah, that's fine by me. As long as we make sure that we can get the fire truck around there and we don't impact. I think there's some parking stalls shown in that southeast corner. We need to make sure we can get around there if there's a vehicle parked there. Yeah, and as part of the comment letter, response letter, I did include a PDF showing the fire truck driving through that radius, and it does maneuver through it fairly easily.
Okay, well, that takes us through all the 11 questions that have been responded to. Are there other questions that the commission members would have? Or the city staff has?
I'd like to be involved with any discussion with DOT on that turn lane, Ron, just so that we can try to move that forward a little quicker. If we could set up a conference call with Sheila perhaps and talk through that, that would be good. It would help save some of the back and forth and questions.
I was just going to suggest the same thing, Dave. If we could get together with you and Ram and Chad and myself and Redmond, we could maybe get that hashed out or get moving together on it.
Do we get to meet like this? Because this stinks.
Yeah,
It sure does.
Is a face-to-face impossible on something like that? We got a big enough room for
We'll all go sit outside when it gets warmer.
6
on the
people?
bench and sit 10 feet away from each other.
This is gonna last forever.
And I'm sure that Redmond and Roger will continue talking with Pete about not letting things go in his trash box and so forth. Okay.
So basically, out of all the comments, just to kind of recap, we'll take that street at 31. I think we've addressed the rest of the issues that are going, and everything else looks good except for that national park. So we can make those adjustments on fairly quickly, and then we'll get together and figure out with Sheila when we can meet with everybody and hopefully make that sooner than later and kind of go from there.
Matt, something that we didn't really talk too much about on this is the drainage that comes down behind the city shop and then goes out towards the street. Is there a desire to try to reroute that to this drainage basin, or does that create some complications, Ron, if we were to look at doing that?
In the drainage report that I submitted, it shows that there's a pretty significant area of property on the DOT right-of-way between that off-ramp and the interstate that drains down to where you're talking about. It also drains the majority of lots 13 and 14. And then right now where the existing conditions, the drainage goes is between those lots, between the city's shop and out onto Cookson Drive. As part of the stormwater management plan and stormwater report for this basin, that is being intercepted and is being routed into the basin because it needs to be taken into that stormwater basin to provide the detention requirements. So there will not be near as much water flowing down through that area next to the city building. Basically, it'll be just a little bit of the rear yards of lot like 3 and 4. All of the rest is being intercepted by Elm Street and taken down to the stormwater basin.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna assume when I was looking at this originally, is that most of it would be caught by that, and all we'd still have is out of the Cookson subdivision. So if that's the case, I don't think it'll cause an issue having it that way. I think that will work out fine.
It really should help the situation for the amount of water that you have running next to the city building and then down Cookson Drive. It will intercept that and get it into the storm sewer system, detain it, and slowly release it at the end of our storm sewer system.
I had one other question that I just thought of when I was standing here. Is that farm fence that's around the property going to be removed?
The farm fence on the south portion of the property will have to be removed in order to do the grading, but we are working with the DOT. We've already addressed that. They will be installing what they typically put up for a fence when you're near an interstate on that south line. And then what would be our east line, if I don't have to, I've got to talk to the guys that are working the dirt, but I don't think we're going to have to remove that fence line on the east side that abuts the Gaskill farm. If we do, it would be for the running the water and sewer over, but we're going to try and avoid it. And then along the north side, it backs up to all those buildings. We have to. People don't want that old fence in their backyard. If they're going to come in and fence, they'll put up new.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. And I guess this wouldn't be my choice either, but we were honestly considering putting trees along the side of our whole property because we didn't want to have residences up against the backside of our shop looking into our yard. So this goes back to the question from earlier, the discussion from earlier, that, I mean, I don't have an issue with the trees being on the city side of the fence there. If you could work something with the neighbor, Dave Peden, to do something similar, it might save you some backyard space there. if that's
Okay.
something that you guys are wanting to do for that buffer between the buildings and the homes. So I guess that's why I was asking about the fence too, because if the fence is out of there and you had the trees on the other side, it'd lead to having a little bigger yards, and we were gonna be putting trees there anyway, so.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'll look into that. No, I can definitely look into that. Yeah, because people typically don't want those old farm fences in their backyard.
Yeah.
So. I'm just trying to leave the Gaskell property alone as much as I can. I don't want to get yelled at.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, well, I think that finishes our items A and B, and I thank you folks very much. Here are a number of details to be worked out still, but I trust this can be. I think we can move on next to item C, which is the West Branch High School expansion site plan, and provide a review of that, any comments that we have. Leslie, when did you send this out to us?
That was in the packet.
John, she says this is in the packet. I believe it's after all the calculations from MMS. There's some larger pages again.
The very end, okay.
Yep.
I'm going to have to bring that up on my computer. She doesn't have the best of waveband. So while
If
I'm
you want
doing
to
that,
jump, John, if you want to jump, I have page 80 in the packet as where that starts.
page which?
Page 80.
80, okay. Well, I'm getting to page 80. Do others have comments on the site plan?
Is there? I thought someone was on this call from the designer. Is that correct?
Yep, Nick Happ, civil engineer with Shy Pattery. Good evening.
Hey.
He's been sitting there for an hour.
Yeah. I guess Nick, can you represent this project? Give us a quick overview of what you're doing, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, the West Branch School District is doing a building addition and renovation project. In addition to refreshing some of the areas adjacent to the building, as you can see on page C101, that is the site plan layout for the development. Associated with that is some parking additions in order to better suit the various facilities there, including proposed revisions to their accessible routes to the various destinations there. You'll also note there is a proposed second access drive to line up with the Dawson Drive and Main Street intersection. That should be a vast improvement for the on-site performance there. A traffic study has been completed on analyzing the project's impact for the area. This is kind of another item. And then also planning to accommodate the increased runoff from the additional impervious area through stormwater management, detention basin. That'll provide a stormwater management benefit adjacent to creek there. And then we're also proposing some kind of improved pedestrian connection to the Dawson Drive intersection, to the Meadows development to the north there. Previously, I don't believe there was a pedestrian connection outside of the trail along the south side of Main Street, which is being reconfigured to improve grades and also improve the drainage performance over it. So that is the kind of highlights of the project. Does anyone
have, this is Ryan on planning zone here. I had a question about the existing access for the high school is still planned to remain, is that correct?
That is correct.
And so is there going to
The
be,
proposed final condition, it would be 2 accesses, both in and out, not one way, in order to provide the best performance on Main Street as well as for the facility.
and I know you just mentioned there was a traffic study that was done, is there any need for a turn lane at this intersection? I know sometimes in the existing condition with only one entrance, there can be backup of cars at that, at peak times for school traffic.
Yes, the traffic study indicated that Main Street will require turn lane improvements. I'm not sure if, is Marty on for the school? Perhaps not. I know that Marty, who is the owner and representative of West Branch High School, still needs to coordinate and follow up from some of our discussions with city staff on those turn lane items. But yes, with the projected traffic on Main Street as well as the improvements, for West Branch High School as well as adjacent developments, turn lanes appear to be necessary.
I appreciate that.
And I believe the study says that turn lanes are required at the intersection, I believe, even without the project and the no-build condition.
Yeah.
But that needs to be, the turn lane item I can't fully speak for, as I need the owner to fully represent what
Sure.
what their position is on that.
So we would just need to have that cleared up by the time this was final approval status.
Yes.
Do we have the traffic study?
We do have the traffic study, John, and I was going to just give a quick summary of the discussion we had with the school district. So they're looking to try to get the on-site improvements, including this new driveway, taken care of here as soon as possible. And they realize that there are some improvements that need to be done on Main Street. The additional traffic won't really be generated this school year, possibly next school year. They would have that open, and we would see an increase in traffic on Main Street and turning into this facility due to the improvements. They are looking to do the left turn lane coming out on their new access on Dawson Drive more as operational, not necessarily triggered by the need due to the traffic, but from a practical standpoint, somebody trying to turn left out of there blocks that. We do want to coordinate the location of that as it butts up to Main Street with a widened section of Main Street, including a turn lane, and Nick and I have had that conversation, and they're going to work on that a little bit as far as the geometry there. But for the most part, what we're looking to do is get this internal part approved so they can get started on the construction of the facilities, realizing that we have to follow up with some sort of agreement on how that Main Street turn lane is going to take place at both the Dawson Drive and the existing school entrance.
Well, I assume that that traffic study can be forwarded to us.
Dave, are you able to forward them as enabled?
Yeah, I can forward that traffic study. I don't think there were really any edits in there, a couple of minor items, but for the most part, we should be able to forward that and rely on the findings that were presented in that study.
Okay.
I sort of answered one of my other questions, which was when this was planned to happen. It sounded like the infrastructure, the streets and utilities may happen this year, and the building may fall into next year. Is that a correct?
No.
Other way around?
It's going out to bid next month.
assume this additional parking is going to be stamped asphalt, not permeable.
It is going to be a concrete, similar to what's there.
Okay.
Kind of a patchwork of various sections, but yeah, concrete.
I'm sorry, Nick, what did you say the scheduled completion date was?
August 21.
21.
Okay, thank you.
But it's not fully open until January of 22, I believe.
Sure.
I'm not sure if this is a question for Nick or maybe Dave or the city staff, but I remember when the Dawson Drive connection was made, we talked about the pedestrian connection across the street. I don't know if there's currently a sidewalk to nowhere, but who puts that sidewalk in, the connection to the school across the street on the Meadows subdivision side?
That's all done. On the
In
middle
talking
side.
with the Meadows, we were working out an agreement between the school, the city, and the Meadows, with the school working on this access and having this storm sewer extended and the approach put in with the sidewalk going through here. All that would be left is the crossing of Main Street, so we need to go back and revisit that with the Meadows folks and see how we get that completed. But that was on their escrow to get that resolved, Ryan.
Okay. Do they have to put in like a crossing beacon or something for that? I'm just wondering if this is going to be a high pedestrian traffic crossing, since you'll have middle school and high school, and it's kind of an arterial street coming down.
We had worked with MPO of Johnson County when we were looking at how this street should look in the future, as well as the intersection of Cedar Johnson Road. And in that study, they had made some recommendations on the pedestrian crossings, with having the lighted pedestrian signs with the arrows and striping the pavement and so forth. So we would likely stay with that recommendation and get those crossings lit up and highly visible.
I think the city was gonna take care of that particular portion, the crossing lights themselves. We were gonna do that, I think. Nothing else. Did I just say something I shouldn't?
They're not cheap. Couple of them. It was, I'm trying to think what that other one was.
35.
Just the flashing lights were probably 9,000. Yeah, they're pretty expensive. That thing was it 3,500 that speed sign?
I apologize, I can't see anyone. I don't know if there's anything else I can help with, or if you're just reviewing the plans.
Yeah, I don't think I have any other questions. If there's, John, I'll turn it back over to you, I guess.
Anyone else have questions on the commission? Any staff members with questions, comments?
Head shaking no from the room.
Again, we can't see each other.
Yeah.
I assume that's a no.
I don't.
I assume that if we do come up with additional comments, we can provide those in writing.
John, I would just make a note that we are looking at trying to get these on-site improvements approved now, and we still need to work out the details of the turn lanes on Main Street that aren't shown on this site plan.
So
I
Dave, do you have
understand there
comments?
are Main Street issues, and but let me ask: can we actually provide approval of the site plan without having a public hearing?
We can't do that tonight.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I don't think we're, John, if I can interject, I don't think we're here to approve it. I think we're just providing comments.
Yeah. that is, although they're seeking an April bid. So any comments obviously have to be before that.
Oh, sure. It sounded like the main issue was the turn lanes, Dave. Do you have any other anticipated comments so far, or have you reviewed it?
No, we've looked at this pretty closely and worked with the school district to try to move this along. The lighting is also shown, I think that's further back in here. They did a photometric study, and they do have pretty good lighting all the way along the drive and in the parking area. We're going to take a little bit closer look at the trail and see if we need to add some lighting there. The stormwater, Nick and I are going to go through that in a little bit more detail. At first glance, it looks like they've done a pretty good job of trying to address it, but just running through the calculations in the meeting here coming up, I think tomorrow. Yep. They provided some landscaping on L101, which shows trees along that new access drive. A few on either side of the parking lot and whatnot. So overall, it seems to fit pretty well with what we'd like to see from a sightline perspective. It's just a matter of trying to get the turn lane issues worked out. I think that's really the only large issue that we need to address.
And I don't know if it really affects anyone, but I believe the turn lane and, public improvements in the public right away associated with that are probably going to be a different plan set. FYI.
Sounds to me then that we can proceed on to item D on the agenda, and that is a draft ordinance 776.
Let me back up a minute,
That
John.
also is not something that we can approve.
John, I have a
but,
question.
if we have any comments, they can be provided.
Can I go back to the high school again? Roger here.
Sure? Okay.
Was the school looking, or Cy Hattery looking for some sort of approval tonight? Or, because we don't meet again till May.
We meet next May 26th.
Is that too late for approval of this site plan though?
But Marty had some things that he had to answer for, is that right? Marty
Well,
Jefferson?
we did meet before this meeting with the owner and architect and Tri-Hattery and city staff to discuss that the turn lane items should not be holding up the site plan approval.
Okay.
I know it would be great if we did have site plan approval. I hope that we've shown that that we've been moving and forward in good faith on those items and looking to iron out any other comments that have been coming our way. So yeah, if we can obtain site plan approval, that would be excellent.
Tonight?
Okay.
We have to have a public
We don't have.
What do commission members think about that?
Of the meeting, so on a site plan, you don't have to, I don't have to publish it in the newspaper.
I'm okay with that.
You just have to have a public meeting, and this is a public meeting, they've been invited to come,
Hello?
nobody came.
John?
But I didn't have it as an action item because I didn't know they wanted approval until after I had sent it out.
So we just had a quick discussion in the room here, and it sounds like we wouldn't have any hurdles. I mean, it sounds like we can approve this,
Amend the agenda to.
amend the agenda to an approve item for this site plan, so that the school won't be held up.
And that would be approval of the site plan for all the on-site changes, but not for the turn lanes and any changes to Main Street, correct?
Yes. So,
That was what they were looking to go forward with
so John,
immediately.
if you need a motion to amend the agenda, I can make that motion.
Okay, go to it.
I move to amend the agenda to approve the West Branch High School expansion site plan.
And I think a friendly addition to that would be that it's for the on-site
On-site, yep.
aspects of that site plan.
One second, Brian.
So it's just too
second
much
it.
uncertainty still with the changes to Main Street.
And we have a second from Brad Bauer.
Okay, it's been moved.
What's the motion on the table now? So, with, except for in regards to the Main Street issue?
I believe
My
that's a separate,
request was to make this for the on-site improvements
Correct.
only.
Got it,
Building,
got it.
parking lot, and so forth. I don't know if that's acceptable or not.
I would agree
yes,
with that.
yep,
Ryan?
yep. I agree.
Okay. Well, then let's have a roll call on the motion of Ryan's motion. That is to accept the site plan for the on-site improvements for West Branch High School.
Commission member Bowers.
Yes.
Bauer.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Van Scoy.
Yes.
Peck absent.
Okay, having dealt with that, I hope you folks can go ahead and do your April bid letting and so forth. The next item D is a draft ordinance which was about corner lots, and we have the information about the ways in which the corner lots would be determined, and the distances and so forth for corner lots. I'm seeking comments on what the staff has provided us, not approval in this case, because again we would need a public hearing for that. So, any comments on the corner lot ordinance?
I don't have no comments on it. Let's just
You can't move on the ordinance without having a public hearing.
Right, so if there's no changes, I had Terry look at it, if there's no changes, this is what we'll come back when we have a public hearing, when we decide to have the next meeting for P and Z. And then we'll do the public hearing, you guys can approve it at that time. And then hopefully at that same time, we'll have the next agenda item, for an approval and public hearing as well. So we can go ahead and move on to the next item.
Okay. Deal?
Very good. Let's move on to E. And E is area regulations. Now, Leslie, you put this on as a topic to discuss, but we don't have those regulations in front of us, do we?
You do not, but you should have your code books. If you pull open your code books, go to page 821. It's chapter 165.33. And under area regulations, it's number 2B, section 1. Under I-1, it has a yard requirements, but if you go to the I-2 district, there are no area regulations. And a few years back, if you remember when the commission was going through and looking at chapter 165, several changes were made. And I don't know if this just got missed or if the project just kind of stalled somewhere. And we do have a property owner in the I-2 district who is questioning if something were to happen to the property that he owns there, what could he rebuild there? And with no area regulations, we can't proceed and provide him an answer. And it's kind of a time-sensitive issue, and Dave can provide some additional comment on that as well if you need additional details on that. But this I-2 does not have any area regulations, so the purpose of this discussion is to identify what those should be.
Okay, I think I need some more explanation.
Okay, John, John, if you read through 165.33 and you get to the second page, it says under item 2, area regulations. It talks about the lot requirements for front yards, side yards, and rear yards. Do you see that?
Frankly, I do not because I haven't gotten out my book and started paging through it. But you can explain what those are.
Okay, so the bulk area regulations refer to the yard requirements, and it talks about the front yard being constructed within 25 feet of the front lot line in the I-1 district and 40 feet in the I-2 district. So in the I-1 district, it's setting the regulation for I-2 just for that. On side yards for I-1, it talks about on lots adjacent to residential district, all buildings and incidental areas should be located provide a minimum side yard of 20 feet on the side yard adjacent to the residential district. All other side yards should be 8 feet. So that's pretty clear. Rear yards are 20 feet. You go down to the I-2 district, and it doesn't have any area requirements. There's a reference to area requirements for R2 and R1, which is not the appropriate location, but it doesn't address the side yards or the rear yard. So we're missing the bulk area requirements for I-2, with the exception that we have this random reference to I-2 in I-1.
All right. Okay. So, what would be appropriate setback requirements for I-2?
That's what we're trying to determine. And if we take a look at the area that's zoned I-2, and if you have access to the website to be able to pull up the zoning map, that might be helpful for this discussion.
I've got it.
Let me know when you have that available.
I've got it.
I've got it.
I'm slow.
So are phobians bringing this up? Okay. I mean, it might help if they can't get it up, if someone could explain.
Well, I'm not going to have any success.
Can we maybe just talk about who the property owner is, so we can identify the specific property in town and have an idea where we're talking about?
Everybody knows
Is that
where it is.
Sure. So Phobians own the grain bins on the north side of College Street.
Okay.
Yep, next to West Ranch Roofing. Office.
Right next to West Branch Roofing, just in front of the welding shop.
Yep.
And then we also have an area of I-2 on the map that is just north of North Ridge Drive. That's that area just south of Cargill.
Okay.
That was,
Is it the vet's office?
The old trucker.
No,
who?
The old trucker.
Yeah.
He died.
no.
it looks
No,
like
it would be north of the,
Right
north
across
of the
from
vet's
Corbin.
office.
North of the vet. Okay, I see it. Never mind.
We have some industrial combos up there, the cell towers up in that area.
Lunches.
Okay.
Yep.
Probably.
And then just across the street from there, there's also one other property, and I believe that is, let's see if I can get an owner on this.
West Branch Roofing.
Lynch's or Virgil?
Lynch Storage, probably.
Lynch Storage in, and I can't remember his name.
Bill Lynch.
Yeah.
I own some of it.
Bill Mosques.
That's it.
Bill.
I have the zoning map up, but I don't have my magnifying glass.
What is this right here? Vet office?
clinic. It looks like.
And this is going to be rezoned. This is going to Crow land, isn't it?
This is. That little corner there is probably not.
But this will be rezoned. You'd never be able to build in that corner if you're going to require a 40-foot front yard setback. You know, and what's it, this is the grain bins?
Nope, that's here.
That's right there.
Yep, and there's some right here too.
And what the heck are these?
Cargill, storage units. Okay.
Oh, there's
And garages. Yes.
commercial building, yeah.
Commercial.
That clinic burned down, and it's only allowed in I-2. They probably never rebuild there either.
Yeah.
Setbacks.
Commercial building, isn't it? So just looking through this a little bit, is maybe part of the issue we have some I-2 zoning that maybe doesn't meet I-2 anymore? Maybe like
Well,
commercial?
we can't find anywhere, Ryan, where it's specified in I-2. There's a reference in I-1 to I-2, but is that really applicable, or is that, if you look at the pyramid zoning structure, it may be, but it doesn't really call out any other bulk area requirements. So we're just wanting to make sure that if we fix it, one, we don't have an issue with a bunch of non-conforming lots by putting in something in that section, and two, that we don't create any sort of undue hardship on the property owner.
Yeah. I think there's probably, like the Cargill plant and the grain bin sites seem like a good fit for I-2, and what we put in our requirements might need to be shaped around them. And then when we add those requirements, we may have to review some of the other locations that are currently zoned I-2 and see if they should be revised to something, because it doesn't, Terry mentioned here, it looks like the vet clinic is zoned I-2, and then also that building on the corner that's sort of trapped, landlocked by the Kroll Ready Mix site, and those would probably not make sense to be this particular zoning if they had to be rebuilt.
Lynch's too.
And Brad mentioned Lynch's.
That would, they'd be screwed.
Warehouse. Yeah. 15 I-1.
So,
Or you could even go with a C and make it less.
two-part answer, I guess. Part one is what's the correct use of the space and how do we revise the code, and then part two is should we review what's I-2 and change some of it.
Right, so the last question, what's I-2, and do we change it? If you look at that area that's the southeast corner of that Crow property where it butts right up to the street, if that does get wrapped into the PUD for that Crow site, it becomes a moot point.
Mm-hmm.
The vet clinic, probably based on its location, almost appears to be kind of a spot zoning type of an issue, with the exception that on the north side there is some, but it certainly doesn't meet the 40-foot front yard setback.
Mm-hmm.
It's only got 25, so that seems like it's maybe not zoned appropriately, or if it were to have anything happen, would have to be rezoned before they can develop it any further. The north side of Northridge Drive, a lot of those seem to be pretty close. There are a couple, the two storage sheds that are opposite each other on the driveway on lot, second lot in. That and the first building are very close. They're maybe setback. Wouldn't know without surveying, but the rest of the buildings along that north side seem to meet that 40-foot.
He's talking Northridge.
The Fobians were asking if the grain bins were ever to come down, and they were not able to rebuild them there, would they be held to that 40-foot setback? And the question comes up because we did acquire some right-of-way from them previously, and at that time they had asked the question about the setback, and we were looking into it, seeing that there weren't bulk area requirements. And now it's come up again. They're just looking for an answer on what is the front yard setback in an I-2 district.
Can we eliminate the I-2 district completely?
I was gonna say.
Just eliminate it and call it
Which brings
I-1?
up the question, what are the rest of the bulk area requirements in I-2 district?
Yeah, but do you wanna,
Right.
do you wanna go ahead and
And
make it
also,
an I-1 up in
quite
that
frankly,
area?
where should the I-2 districts be?
That's
in the
true.
city?
You know what I mean? Look at it, to the north of it's R3, to the south of it's R3.
Technically, it's light industrial, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it's already I-2. Isn't I-1 less
I-1 is less restrictive. Heck, I'd probably go ahead and look at maybe making it I3, or excuse me, I3, R3, maybe. I mean, do you wanna, that's just sort of like an island there, I mean, either that or downzone it to like maybe a type of C occupancy that allows your warehouses and storage units and, you know, items like that. I think that's pretty intense zoning.
What
I
about,
know
like,
why they did it.
What about
but-
like Matt Moore and like West Branch Roofing? What would happen to them if they ever wanted to?
I don't know.
If they ever wanted to what?
Because I don't. They
Remodel.
They wouldn't.
You can
they wouldn't-
remodel. I mean, the thing is that
What if they want to build though?
Well, they,
you mean add on or
Well,
something
it
like that
does.
there?
Yeah,
40-foot setback would
they
kill
would.
them.
That would not. They would not be able to do that with a 40-footer where they want to. Where they would like to build.
Yeah. West Branch Roofing.
But one West Branch Roofing
Wait, I'm talking, it's the south side of the road, so
be considered a
that's already our, I mean,
building or construction
That's
supply
I.
business.
oh, it is I.
It is I.
Isn't West Branch Roofing a?
Yeah, but the 40. They wouldn't be able to build with a 40-foot setback.
No, that's why I say go ahead and downzone.
Yeah.
Under the C2, CB2 districts, contractor yards, they're allowed. They're probably zoned wrong anyways.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, go ahead and downzone
But
this
that's the
I2 down
question,
into
is everything
something.
zoned appropriately?
What's that?
I think it's not. It's simply, that's how
Mhm.
things
It's
have
just
grown
not
up.
zoned properly.
We don't have an I-1 in town. Oh, there's one.
Rather than have an industrial district there, something else,
Sheds
a
I-1.
commercial district perhaps.
CB2, almost.
CB2.
Because like Terry said,
So what is,
he has a lumber yard, the building or construction supply
A welding
business.
shop?
yeah, because you have a welding shop, a grain bins, and a roofing company in that area.
Building contractor facilities, yards,
Uh,
pre-assembly yards, which is
repair
where the,
garages,
like
building
Matt
construction,
Moore
truck
stuff is
terminals.
falling, some of those stuff sitting out there.
You know, I mean,
Warehousing and storage,
heck, in a
Is
CI1
under
zone, you
C-
can manufacture and
CB2.
store gunpowder. But in an I1, you can't.
animal hospitals is under CB2.
That's under CB2? Yeah, I mean,
I think that's a much better fit
the CB2, correct?
Yep.
for that north part anyway. I don't know about,
And that's only gonna require you, what, a 25-foot setback front yard? Yep,
30. Wait.
B, front yard,
25 foot.
yeah.
Setback requirement?
The front yard,
here it is, your 25.
let's see, it says all buildings
Rear
incidental
yard
to
is 20.
30 feet on the side yard. Okay, yeah, 25 foot
25 foot for the front, 30 for the side,
if it abuts a residential district.
okay, what's a rear, doesn't
The
matter.
rear's gonna be 20 foot. I mean, that would be, I think, a lot smarter thing to do than to get rid of the I2 zoning district.
Like with West Branch roofing, would you be able to make an exemption though? Because they're
So-
not gonna meet that on the backside.
Prohibited,
But
God, just in case you don't, like,
meet what?
the prohibited
Yeah, but they're right up against
non-industrial
Herring's.
uses,
But the thing is
residential,
when the city
restaurant,
changes the
school,
zoning,
church, hospital, cemetery, prohibited industrial use, acid manufacture, storage, slaughterhouse and stockyard, manufacture of fertilizer, garbage waste materials, and manufacture, storage of gunpowder.
That's CI
Other than that, I think it seems to go in a much better way.
the thing with
Leslie, I'm just noticing now as we're going through this, CI2 also does not have bulk area
No
requirements.
area regulations on CI2.
Oh.
Same problem,
CI or CB2?
CI2.
Yeah,
On page 826.
Yeah, it doesn't, does it?
the thing when you go ahead and change the zoning on a use or on a parcel of ground, and if it doesn't meet that zoning, it's considered non-conforming. Non-conforming runs with that use. If we're worried that they might want to expand because you're saying they don't meet because what, setbacks or?
Pretty sure from the back, they'd be pretty tight, they'd have, cause they butt right up against, they bought a Quonset.
Yeah, I think
bought
I think it's
So they're,
much more
I mean,
appropriate.
the
CBD
buildings are
than
right
it
there.
is.
So they'd never go ahead and expand there if they were conforming.
Well, they would, what
They want to.
they want to tear the building down and then put up a new building.
Yeah. New machine shed.
And this is West Branch roofing, but if you still change the zoning to C2, they'd still be allowed. Because
Put that right
building
there,
contractor facilities.
but they wouldn't meet the setback.
Right now, let's say they're 5 feet from the property line, rear property line right now.
I guess
kinda like
I'm
BP
missing
was.
something here. If
Well,
it
they don't
was
meet
still
it now.
I2, they still couldn't expand.
Yeah, they don't meet it under I2 or I1
Yeah.
either.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
CB2,
They'd have to go ahead and
Bradley,
maybe get a special exception.
CB2 they could, building
That's what I'm
contractor
asking, if
facility,
they could do that.
yard,
Yeah.
Yeah,
pre-assembly yard.
So, by going ahead and doing a CB2, maybe they'd want to extend to the front yard more. Then they could, they wouldn't need the 40-foot setback, because it's an
They have a
I2
lot-
right now.
cause see what happened with that property, it was an old elevator. So West Branch Roofing bought one building and then Herring bought the next building and the rest.
Mhm.
So it was all one property at one
It
time.
got split up.
And then it got split up.
I think rather than go ahead and try to go ahead and figure out some setback requirements for your I2 zones, go ahead and rezone them. Because it sounds like to me that 90% of it, they're in the wrong zone anyways.
The I2 is what, 40?
That would be my opinion.
If you apply the language in the I1 district where it's.
Yeah, if you apply it where it says it, yeah. John, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that we should not be looking at just one of these properties or two of these properties, but frankly at all of them.
I agree.
I have the feeling that we should not be having industrial properties so close to town, and that something else would be more appropriate, whether that's a CB district or whether it's instead a business district, B2 perhaps. But one thing we didn't do in the comprehensive plan was to go back to the zoning map and ask, are there some changes that should take place? And I would think that yes, there are, and probably a fair number of them.
Yeah, it's true. I think this one in particular, though, the way the use is fit pretty much like a glove in terms of what's there. That's one of the reasons why we, wanted the Kroll out of the middle of the residential neighborhood, right? Like part of the process. So to keep it as I2 doesn't make any sense. Certainly doesn't. I don't know, lend to that. It's
Yeah, that's the thing in terms of anticipated growth of the city. to have that sort of thing in the fairly
I
close
think it's a perfect example of kind of an old zoning and new growth amongst new growth and, the forming of the community around it.
So Dave, can we say, to answer the question about the Fobian property, can we say it seems like that area may fit better as a CB2 district, and then we need to review the remaining I2 zoning areas at a future meeting to get that straightened out? Does that get us far enough for what you had brought before you?
Promise them.
Could you say the zoning designation that you're proposing for that again, Ryan? It cut out on me.
It sounded like CB2 might be a better fit for that area with the West Branch Roofing and Moore's Welding and then the grain bins.
Yes.
So if you needed an answer for that specific area today, maybe that's our answer. And I guess I'm asking the rest of the commission if anyone has a...
I think that's a suitable answer, yes. Whether it's the very best, I'm not sure.
And then we can certainly continue to review the remaining areas that are zoned I2 and see what they may need to be modified as well in a future meeting.
Okay.
I think that meeting should be the May 26th meeting.
Okay.
Agreed.
We need to make a motion on that or something.
We also want to take a look at some of these other zoning districts and try to clean up the language in those while we're at that meeting.
Yeah, it sounded like the CI2 was missing the
Yep.
same thing as
Area
I2 was, area requirements. Thank you.
Okay, well, can we pass on to the owner that that's what we're going to do? We're going to review all of the I2 areas with the anticipation that we'll move these to CB2 requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to old business, number 5, and I was raising as old business what had happened to our comprehensive plan that was passed on to City Council, and the answer is they have not acted on it. I would hope that action could take place pretty soon, because if I need to make any revisions, I'm going to be losing my student to know how to do the typing of those revisions.
I sincerely doubt
Yeah,
that the council will make
Roger,
any revisions.
Roger, why has that not happened?
Or look at it.
This is Leslie, I had sent it to the staff to have them look at their comments, in January, and I gave them until January 31st. And I had not received any, and then, as usual, everything's busy here. I was on vacation, and then since I've been back from vacation, we've had this stuff. So since I've received no comments, I will go ahead and forward it to the city council next for their comments. And we'll have it on an upcoming meeting, but we do require a public hearing for it to be adopted. So there is a process, so we'll get moving on that. As Roger said, if you didn't hear, City Council probably will not have any comments either. I did have a few typos that I had sent back to one of the students.
I have a typo in there, and we'll have to get that one fixed.
Yeah, but I don't know if that was fixed. I never got a clean copy back.
Leslie, let me just add, we
I'll check
need
that out.
to have a
Okay.
Word document. Right now, I think we only got PDF.
Any other old business?
John, they're just in the room here. Redmond was mentioning they needed a Word document version of the comprehensive plan, just as a relevant
I
comment.
thought that was what had been provided.
No, I got a PDF.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise I would have made the typo correction myself.
Okay, I'll make sure that's to you then. Very good. City staff reports, number 6.
I have nothing.
I'm busy. A lot of stuff going on. Like, what do we have?
I see more new
6
construction going on.
zeros? 8 zeros?
Yeah. A couple more. Oh.
Yep, single family.
Anything else?
John, while I've got everybody here, I was just going to give a quick update on Herbert Hoover Highway so that I
Oh, good.
let you know where that is. The county is beginning to start work on the first segment, which is going to take place from the exit 249, and that'll run the first two segments of what they had originally planned, so about 2/3 of the way to West Branch. They're going to try to get that done here shortly, and then we've got some coordination issues with the DOT on the interstate widening and a potential detour route while we have the ramp closures that may impact that last leg that would bring it up to Cedar Johnson Road. So the county is still working with the DOT to get the schedule worked out on that, and once I know that schedule, I'll update everybody. The other item that I'd like to bring up is that we have been talking with Cedar County and Johnson County on Cedar Johnson Road, and the discussion has been that there was an old 2080 agreement that was executed between the counties and the city of West Branch, where the road was seal coated and both counties sort of bowed out of any responsibility for that roadway, basically turning it over to the city with the exception that we don't have jurisdiction over it, but we have all the maintenance responsibilities. So Roger and I and the county engineers have been talking back and forth. We're looking at the city, if we can do so, taking over jurisdiction of that road, basically from Main Street north up to where the Level B service road begins north of the golf course. So those are the two items I have to report on.
Dave, so that would require
Okay. Anything else, Terry?
Hold on,
I have a quick,
hold on. Roger had a question.
Roger first.
On Dave's comments there.
That would require annexing, that's what we're getting at, right? The west,
Yes,
the
we
west
would
half
likely
of
have
Cedar
to
Johnson
annex
Road.
that section of roadway, and we would also want to investigate at that point, from a growth perspective, does it make sense to approach some of the adjacent property owners?
Okay,
You mean to the west?
To the west, yes.
Yep. Okay.
That would be our logical growth direction at this point.
go ahead, Emily.
Okay. Roger, you had a question?
No, I'm done.
Comment?
Emily, do you have a question?
You're done. Okay.
I had a couple. This is Emily. I had a couple questions from citizens wondering about the coal. Watching them, they cleaned it up, got all that cement chopped up and everything. But the neighbors were asking me about what the next step was, what the process was, and I guess we hadn't really talked about it recently. So I was just checking in.
I can answer that. The next process is to get those mountains of boulders crushed into gravel, that hopefully can be used on some new developmental streets in West Branch at Meadows and the golf course.
Nice.
Hopefully we got a use for that gravel right here in town.
That'd be nice.
That's the next step.
And then we're getting to the point where we can start talking about doing something with it.
Yeah,
An RFP?
Yeah.
yeah, that's good for now. No comment? Yeah.
Okay, cool. I will pass that along. Thank you.
Okay, we started on number 7, comments from commission members. Any additional
sorry.
ones?
I might have one, John, if that's all right. I'm wondering about, I think a meeting or two ago, we talked about some fringe area agreements, and I know there's been talk of a development on the east side of West Branch, just outside of our city limits. I'm just wondering if there's been any progress on the fringe area agreements, or what, any kind of status update, or what we should be doing, seeing that project and making sure there's not a bunch of liabilities for the city in the future getting put in there.
I don't don't think anything's proceeded. That's one of the things the comprehensive plan called for, was more attention to fringe area agreements with the surrounding counties. But I don't know if anything's happened.
Yeah, I got one of those, the Johnson County laying on my desk for the past 6 months.
Yeah.
I haven't done a thing with it.
Yeah, I think I remember, John, you had sent one to me, and I had forwarded it to Kevin, and then another one had come, and Kevin Olson, the city attorney, was to review them, so. I'll send a note and see if he's made any progress.
Seems like it might be a
Hey, why
time-sensitive issue.
don't you
With
put
the,
that on the agenda for the 26th also?
Ryan, the one that you were referring to, was that east of town?
yeah, east of town on the south side of the highway.
Okay, so that would be in Cedar County. Do we have a 2080 or a fringe area agreement with Cedar County for extraterritorial review?
I thought we did, because years ago, north of town, when I was on this committee, we reviewed a 5-house development just north of town.
Okay. There's a state code provision for a 2-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction that applies whether we have a fringe area agreement or not. But I was just curious if we have a area agreement with Cedar County.
I don't believe we do, but
Not
you're
informal.
right, we do have that 2-mile area that we can review. Okay, well, I have one comment, and that is, I wonder if there's some way that we could set up the room so we can have 10 feet between people or something for our next meeting.
Yeah, let's make that happen.
I don't know how bad
As
the
long as it's under
environment's
10
going to
people.
be. Pardon me? Oh,
As long as it's under 10 people,
Oh,
okay.
come on, it's 12
Well,
that's the
we
only
could
problem.
We could be under 10 people. We could have people go to an adjoining room and come in and out as needed.
We put up glass windows like Hy-Vee does.
Yeah, there you go.
It's so awkward.
It's like the glass is
Let's
very-
make it work out. This is ridiculous.
Yes, it
What's
is.
that?
I think that's a consensus. We should try to meet in a room somehow.
Get some
Right.
tape it off on the floor, 6 foot.
And
Whenever
we
the
can
next
keep it
meeting has to
to
be.
10 people with just staff and
You stand
and
there.
commission members. But if we have others, we can shunt people in and out of the room.
right? Well, that may bring up the question on public hearings and stuff. Like, we may need an alternative with this situation, like an alternative method for people that may be immunocompromised or something that want to talk or have something to say. You know what I mean? Not that that's ever been a thing before, but
Yeah. No, it's not.
something to think about anyway.
But if the staff could figure out some possibilities, I think that would be really great rather than doing this over the telephone.
Yeah, even Zoom would be if we're
Would be better.
and we get basically shut in our houses, then I think Zoom would be an okay thing as well. It'd be better than this,
Right.
I would think, but my opinion.
I would agree with that. I just hope we can see if there's some kind of an alternative way of doing things.
Yep.
Okay, any more comments or thoughts? If not, I'll call this meeting adjourned.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Didn't get a motion.